Hello, everybody. I'm Jonathan G. Blanco with TF Labs. It's been a crazy day with Bitcoin zooming past 21K. We planned this Bitcoin roundtable a little earlier, and I'm glad we did because we're going to be talking about some interesting stuff with what's been happening over the last couple months as well as today. So I'm going to welcome my guest to the chat. And we'll get right into that. So real quick, why doesn't everybody just introduce themselves, and I'll just go in the order that you're on my screen. So Kristy, you want to go first?
Hi, Kristy-Leigh Minehan, aka Oh Got a Girl. I guess I am the resident mining expert. Lumped in here and ask me anything about mining.
Nice. Simon, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Simon Yu. I'm the CEO and co-founder of StormX. It's an easy way for users to get introduced into crypto by shopping online and earning crypto from shopping at stores like Nike or eBay, or I think we added Wish and hundreds of stores. We've been building this space since 2014.
Nice. Brian?
Hi, I'm Brian Lockhart. I'm the organizer of the Seattle Bitcoin Meetup, and up until January, I worked at Casa HODL. We did Casa nodes for full Bitcoin nodes and Lightning nodes, and now I think Casa still is offering the best full custody service, self-custody service for Bitcoin.
Awesome. And Ryan, round us out.
Ryan Castillo here, the co-founder of Castillo Capital, and a lot of people on Twitter know me as Castillo Trading, and I have a lot of experience with trading financial markets, most recently the digital asset market.
Excellent. Awesome. Thanks. Well, for those that are watching, most of the people on our channel know what Bitcoin is, so we don't have to have that conversation, but what is Bitcoin doing? Let's have that conversation. So, basically what was about October, Bitcoin was in the 10,500 range or so. And we've zoomed all the way to 21. So we've essentially doubled in that short period of time. Anybody want to kind of touch in what they think is causing that?
Pre-holiday rally happens every year on the clock. Anytime a holiday happens, you always get this little bull run, and then right as the holidays hit, you'll start to come gently down. The markets will gently correct themselves. So we had this at just before Thanksgiving as well, where we had that run up to 19K, and then it cut off. If you look at last year, exact same thing happened. Usually there's 2 or 3 days between, but it's just a pre-market rally, always happens. Interesting to note is I think this one's going to be stronger than our previous years. And it might, part of this is due to a lot of the institutional demand in the US, but also because we're going to have a bit of an extended celebration in some countries. And of course, that rally will continue from January into February because of Chinese New Year.
Okay, all right. What does everybody else think? Is it that? I mean, it has 2017 was like that, but what do other people think?
I think the seasonal thing is true and happens to one degree or another every year. I think this year is a little different for a couple of reasons. One, we had the halving in May, and so you just have this predetermined supply shock, which, as some of us will know, that really impacts miners quite a bit, but it also just chokes down the supply. It takes a while to rear itself or to make itself known, but I think that was primed to start kicking off a bull run later this year anyway. And then on top of that, we had some pretty huge macro shocks, which I think brought in the interest of the institutional and corporate investors that we've been seeing just stampeding in lately. And so I hate to jinx this, but this, as opposed to like a retail fueled bull run, this one feels a lot more slow and steady by comparison, with stronger hands buying in at much greater amounts that are not going to be dumping at the first sign of the dip, which of course there will be a dip, there always is.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot of macro things that came into play on this one. One was the election that came in 2020. I think that there was a lot of stuff kind of going on with just the stock market in general, not even just Bitcoin, but you can go to the the SPY and the NASDAQs and, all of those sorts of, we talked about the precious metal market. I think that there's just a lot of things kind of projecting Bitcoin right now. And a big difference is the momentum. I think that Bitcoin has a lot of momentum right now. And it is completely different from the rally that happened in 2017 because it's now getting a lot of attention. And, like you were kind of saying, this isn't a retail fueled run up. This is more of a big buyer, stronger holding hands, kind of buying this. And it's been a very gradual run up compared to 2017. So I think we will get some sort of momentum that continues us kind of into, Oh God, a girl was kind of saying, into the new year and January. And, we'll kind of see how it goes. But I think that it's just a very different run up than what happened in 2017.
Yeah, I think, signing to that, it's definitely more driven by a macro event, and probably the largest being the U.S. dollar money supply, right? Like around 20%, right? It was printed this year alone compared to all of American existence. And then that sort of led to a bunch of institutions hedging their bets, and including like Square putting 1% of their entire total treasury into Bitcoin, and especially with MicroStrategy, right? So we're seeing them even taking like a convertible loan of $500 million on top of what they've already had. And I think their total exposure is now over $1 billion, right? And so there's actually an interesting thread on that point where the MicroStrategy asking for loans to buy Bitcoin, it sounds kind of stupid, but at the same time, it's kind of genius because it allows a bunch of institutions and mutual funds and hedge funds to get into Bitcoin exposure because normally they can't, because of how it's classed and what the risk rating and level is like. But if they were to buy into that, that's how they can get exposure into Bitcoin. And it's a good way to hedge. So read some rumors that some other companies were trying to do something similar where they could raise some cash, but at the same time there will just be large amounts of Bitcoin just being depleted just because these institutions have large amounts of cash that they need to diversify. And plus, you look at Grayscale and look at what Barry Silber's just been, providing in terms of how much Bitcoin that they've owned, and it's just been growing significantly. And I think the institution channels will just continue growing. I think Grayscale, there is a big premium. So if there are more, options like MicroStrategy or some other platforms that are offering this, then instead of an ETF, we'll get something similar, and more institutions will come, and maybe even governments will start coming in. And that's probably one of the reasons why we're so bullish, especially in 2021 this year.
Yeah.
Unless the regulators really put a stop to everything. So.
Yeah, I want to touch on the institutional investors, but before that, I think the MicroStrategy is a fun thing to talk about, right? Because you think of it as a corporate CEO deciding to make a bet into Bitcoin from like a treasury element. And when he did, I think it was right around like 9,500 or so was his first buy. And, a lot of people thought he was crazy for doing that. He looks pretty genius now, on that move. Like you mentioned, Square did the same thing. What do you think that does for the broader market overall? Like, are they still mavericks in that decision? Are they a part of essentially like the coming of Bitcoin into, corporate America? What do you guys think?
So I have a perhaps unique to this group insight into MicroStrategy. I worked at Tableau for many years, and they were one of our competitors coming into the market. And so when I first heard about this MicroStrategy guy, I remember him. We did our best to knock him out of the market back a couple of years ago. And to hear that he's making this huge move into Bitcoin was, I think, a little odd. And also, I think that reaction is captured in some of the downgrade, like Citigroup downgraded them a little bit based on, they think that it's a distraction that the CEO is doing this. They're not looking at the monetary numerical gain of the stock price and all that stuff closely. They're more, I think, being myopic and looking at, well, the CEO is taking his eye off the ball of their core product and their core competency. So I think that we're kind of biased because we look at this and go, yeah, he's a genius. He gets it. He's buying Bitcoin first. And to some companies, they are going to be looking at that. And then you get the more stead companies like, what was it, Mass Mutual, a big insurance company.
Yeah.
So I think that company might have more of a long running influence on other corporations, because I think it's pretty easy to take a cynical approach when you see MicroStrategy do it and go, they were kind of a plateaued data visualization company. They're making about 50 million a year free cash flow, but they're not growing anymore. They're kind of stagnating and going down. And so it's easy to poo-poo that and wave it away if you're a cynic. I think it's harder for a non-Bitcoin nerd company to look at MassMutual and dismiss that, or like Guggenheim or companies like that. So I think MicroStrategy kind of like lit off a flare a little bit, but I think it's the other companies coming in that might get the longer attention of normal companies. That's just
essentially like legacy, like these legacy institutions that have been around for hundred. I think MassMutual is over 100-year-old company.
Yeah, like the companies we don't think of or hear about, but they're monsters. They're just huge companies.
Yeah.
And adding to John, what you said, I think they were sort of the Mavericks. And I mean, it's not just MicroStrategy this year, right? We've seen PayPal, we've seen Fidelity, and I mean all these funds. And if we see like BlackRock putting 1% of their assets, it's game over, right? So just there are trillions of assets in there. So I mean, it's just the beginning, and I think it's just sort of they were. I mean, it's from a company perspective, like you said, Brian. It's a complete risky move. Like it's so easy to be fired from your board saying that what the hell did you do?
Exactly. Imagine working there if you weren't a Bitcoiner.
Right, but he's got balls, and if his bet pays off, I think it'll be good. But he literally bet on a red chip or black chip, and in this case, right now it's paying off. But what scares me a little bit is I think that the G6 and the G7 community, they keep talking about regulating crypto and even trying to limit people's private wallets, for example, too. And then if the regulations get a little bit too strict, at least in the U.S., then all that will be put to a halt, and probably we'll see a big correction, right?
It's just kind of it's hard to ignore at this point, right? I mean, thinking of everything, I think a lot of people wanted to ignore it, especially some of the larger funds. They were kind of ignoring it when it started to hit 10,000, 11,000, 12,000, but now, running from what was it, 30. 36, 34 after March 12 sell off, all the way now up to 21,000. Like it's just getting harder and harder for these funds to ignore what Bitcoin is doing. And at this point, you can either jump on or get left behind, because as we're breaching all-time highs, there will be some sort of pullback that happens at some point, because that's what happens during parabolic run-ups. But at the same time, I think that there's going to be a lot more institutions buying these pullbacks, and it's just getting harder for people to ignore.
Now, when crypto, when everything crashed, I should say, in March, right? When what was that, March 12th or so, when the markets crashed, and then Bitcoin also crashed as a result. A lot of people talked about how one of the reasons was it was because the institutional investors that had Bitcoin dumped. Like, do we run into a similar situation?
Is that a common assertion that institutional guys were dumping? I was betting it was like just margin calls and stuff like that. Everything got dumped.
I completely agree with Brian on that one.
Really?
I think it's more on the correlation between the S&P 500 fell crazy, right? Everyone was freaking about the corona.
Sure. It wasn't right. I mean, there was a bigger market situation, of course, but. Anyways, so I guess where I was going with that question anyway is, if there is a market issue, a global market issue similar to what took place in March, right? Do we think that this time around Bitcoin has that resistance to, maintain the same, or does it correlate to the stock market like it did at that point?
I don't think it. I mean, I think the same thing will happen as March, just because there's not as many places to spend, right? So in order for us to really, truly capture Bitcoin as a reserve asset, is like if we can just rely on this and not on cash or stock markets to just be able to buy groceries or things that we need, like toilet paper or whatever, the things are sold out during a pandemic, for example. But as of right now, there's still like crypto debit cards and stuff that you can use, but the fees are a little bit high, and also the capital gains tax to record each transaction is just a nightmare, and that's what we're trying to figure out. So, I mean, we've seen like countries like Venezuela, picking up Bitcoin more for normal adoption, but in the U.S. we're still a few years away.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the key differences between this run and last run. Last run, I feel, was more fueled by retail investors following the Bitcoin as payments narrative, as opposed to this time around where it's institutional and corporate buyers to a larger extent. I don't know, but they're bought in solidly to the store of value narrative, and so they don't care about using it for payments. They're going to have a longer term view on it, and to the extent they view it as money, I think they're comfortable on having it move from collectible to now store of value, which can then turn into medium of exchange and then unit of account. I feel like the last time we got overexcited that Bitcoin was going to race through store of value and kind of instantly become a medium of exchange, unit of account too early, and I think that was unrealistic.
Yeah, I think that's a super fair, point of view, especially when you see, these billionaires or these institutions saying percentage of wealth or percentage of holdings or percentage of treasury, right? Like those are all, groupings of store of value, not, cash. Real quick, I want to take a pause for just a second and say, if you're watching us, this is a live recording. So do us a favor and ask questions. We'll do our best to answer them as they come up. If you like what we say, give us some thumbs up. If you don't like what we say, give us thumbs down. It's an open combo here. And also do us a favor and retweet and share this out where you're looking at it. Cool. So, Kristy, I'd love to know, what does mining look like today? Is it impacted? Is it different? What is mining? What's the effect of mining on what's happening?
Mining is an incredibly hot market right now. Miners have teamed up with some of the bigger institutions to just give a steady supply of Bitcoin. It's becoming much more professional, much more industrialized, which is, depending on what crowd you sit in within the Bitcoin community, that's a bad thing for the decentralization or potentially a good thing for adoption. The jury's out on which side to sit on. There's a lot of concerns about the lack of equipment. Rumors are that most of the equipment is actually sold out until summer next year, which is putting more and more pressure on companies that are really trying to scale up, and especially in America, to find an alternate source of equipment. And eventually, a lot of them are going to have to make the decision to either build their own equipment or team up with, a third-party vendor or a contract OEM to get their own source of equipment. I'm sure you all read in the news. There's plenty of bigger institutions that are deploying capital. Of course, Scientific was the most recent one with their $23 million purchase. Part of it going to their own farms, part of it going to their customers, and that's about all I can say. Bitcoin mining is it's actually exciting to see it finally take off. Yeah. It's taken this many years for it to be an accepted type of investment. And definitely from my vantage point, I'm starting to see a huge growth outside of China. So now that most of the S9s have sort of tapered off, not all of them, they're still, kind of running in China, but most of them have started to taper off. Newer deployments of equipment are definitely trending towards overseas. China's still a hot market. It holds about, last calculations I did, I think it's gone from 63% down to 57% this year, which is quite a lot. And North America is up to about 13% of global hash power. So we are seeing a steady build out of equipment here in America.
Hey, I'm curious, what's the current state of flaring capture? I'm speaking from a position of ignorance, but I know that there's this idea of capturing flared off gas and using that to fuel, to power mining rigs or mining methods.
So companies like Crusoe Energy are doing really well in that regard. More pairing with the companies that own the pipes themselves. You've got Upstream Data, which makes those cute little boxes that I love that are also doing well. I would say right now it's definitely a niche. It's more a way for you to make use of the gas when it could otherwise not be repurposed or used. So it's more of a business to business type of deal. It is always going to be a little bit of a niche. Don't expect to have 20% of the world's hash power on that, more like 1 or 2%. But it's definitely, a good, we're definitely seeing that growing, and more so in America than Canada. Or thinking back in 2018, a lot of people were saying this was up and coming in Canada and this is going to be a really big thing. It sort of fizzled off there, and most of what we're seeing is happening in America with regards to that. But Crusoe Energy is making waves in the news, and they're doing really good on that front.
It's a nice thing to be able to hold up, not as a kill all the argument, but like, hey, when the people say Bitcoin mining is boiling the environment, you can say, well, it's not all that bad. Here's an example.
Yep. Bitcoin mining is so we could talk about that a little bit. Square recently did their fund. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, but I think it was like $10 million or $30 million. I forget the amount.
I think it was even more than that, but I'll look it up real quick because I can't. Now it's gonna.
So whatever the number, Square Crypto did a huge fund just for furthering the green energy that's being used in Bitcoin, and for that can be going towards new data center designs, new mining farms, new kinds of equipment that take advantage of this. I have to say that, having a foot in the traditional computing world, cryptocurrency mining is definitely advancing green and clean energy. And for the people that like to go rah, it's destroying the planet, I urge them to look at banks, the financial reporting for banks, and figure out exactly how much OPEX banks spend on traditional data centers that are just burning coal and fossil fuels. Yep. And then come back and complain that Bitcoin is not energy efficient and is destroying the planet.
And I looked it up real quick. It was 10 million. So I guess I was getting too excited on that, but still, nonetheless, that Square is doing 10 million on that shows.
So I see a question from Damon in the comments here. Is it true that China still does most of the mining? I'll let you answer, but I believe it's yes, but maybe it's shifting.
Yeah, it is. It is true that China still does most of the mining. Here's the thing, though. China was the one to embrace most of it. They have all the equipment manufacturers there. And you know what? China also does most of everything in the world because they're a huge bloody country. They have the most population. It's a thing that happens. They have, the most, I think they have the most cell phone sales per country. Yeah. They're a large country, so it happens. Slowly, so here's putting a little bit of prediction. I think China's always going to maintain 30 to 40% of the global hash rate, just because of the fact that they're closely located to the equipment manufacturers, but also the energy markets there are completely different. It's a good investment. It's starting to become much safer as a form of investment over in China as well. So they're always going to have a bit of a lead. That doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin is at risk of anything. It just means that we need to make sure that no one entity controls all 40% of that Chinese hash power.
Yep. Oh. Yeah, crazy. Okay, so a lot of it seems as though what gets people the most interested in Bitcoin from a novice standpoint is the price, right? So the fact that it's going up. I actually received like 3 emails to me of people who told me I helped them get into Bitcoin. They're like, congratulations, that it crossed 20,000. It was pretty funny, actually. So, I'd love for each, not everybody or whoever wants to, like, what are the kind of things that you tell your family or your friends as they start thinking about getting into Bitcoin when it comes to the price or, paying attention to it? Like, for example, what I always say is that, no matter what price you buy Bitcoin at, it's going to feel expensive. But just like any investment, you're not necessarily purchasing it for the price today. You're purchasing it for, the future value of it. This is not financial advice, by the way. But, love anybody else's thoughts on that.
I get this a lot all the time, and I tailor my advice based on just my read of the individual and or how well I know them. And if they've done no research and all they've heard about is the whatever soundbite on TV they saw or whatever, I encourage them, okay, well, sure, if you want to just get some exposure to it, put in a very small amount and start paying attention to it. And in the meantime, I'll give you some reading information if you want to go that deep. And I don't chill it in any regard for that. I don't want people to go from the world of mutual funds into Bitcoin full hog and get surprised in that way.
Well, it's still a very volatile asset, honestly. And so for me, like a lot of people might jump the ship, pull their 401k and put it into Bitcoin or something. It's still a very risky move, you know, as some people have done that and they've made a lot of money doing so. But when it comes to traditional finances and, you know, keeping that money safe, it's still a risky move to do that with Bitcoin. But I agree. I kind of am very hush hush about it. A lot of people know that I'm involved in Bitcoin, that I involved with digital assets, but I kind of really only go over it with them if they ask. I don't go, you know, to family dinners and start talking, oh, you know, Bitcoin price is 21,000. But if someone mentions it to me, then, you know, I'll start talking about it a little bit more. But, you know, realistically, they have to do their own research. A lot of people still think that it's a get rich quick scheme, especially when it comes to the trading side of it. The investing side, people don't want to do as much work, but you really, really have to study blockchain in a whole, not just Bitcoin. And that's one thing that I always advise, you know, study blockchain, study digital assets, study the stuff going on. Bitcoin is just one small piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and I've been telling some of my friends to start buying when it was at like 400, and then, you know, but the downside of like, you're telling people when to buy, and even if it does go up or down, the hard part is they'll keep asking you questions, right? And they just keep filling your inboxes, and it just becomes hard to follow. Like, well, it dropped 10% or it went up 10%. Should I buy more? Should I sell? Like all that stuff, and then there's never a good answer because you can't predict the future. I just tend to.
Yeah, Dave Portnoy. I don't know if you guys know him. The Barstool Sports CEO is a great example of
We
that.
can't.
He got took out within the first couple of days, and look at where, you know, Link is now compared, you know, where Bitcoin is now to everything. You know, that's just a very common story of people wanting to get involved, but then getting shaken out because it is a very volatile asset.
Right. Yeah. People are very trigger happy, especially when it comes to crypto, I think. And, you know, for me, I do believe in like the long-term hold, at least for Bitcoin. So I tend to like why I think I'm bullish on all these macro events, and especially in like emerging countries, their, you know, local currencies are failing, and we have all these institutions and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I do this for like, I got into like trading options and stocks like back in like 2011, 12. That's how I first really got into it. And then before sort of the equities market crashed this year, John knows this too, I shorted the crap out of like the S&P 500 and like really volatile stocks. And, you know, people were asking me questions because I make quite a bit, but it's just there's not enough time in the day to just constantly, you know, because we're all in the industry here. I think we follow the news a lot more closely, but we can't just keep sharing that to everyone that we know, you know, through private DMs. There's just not enough time. So it's always best to just give, you know, take your own risk and do your own research kind of thing, right?
Well, it's true too, right? Like, you know, even those of us that are in the industry, it's even hard to keep up being in the industry and talking with people about it, you know, consistently. So, you know, if you're new, you really got to spend that time, you know, in that to learn, and exactly what you're saying, like understand kind of like the reasons behind it too. And, you know, I think as much as there's people that are very much about like the altruistic reasons of Bitcoin, which I think are very important. If you, I think having that view, or at least learning about it, also helps stabilize like why you might believe it to be an asset that would continue to restore its value, right? It's not the way it was designed and orchestrated from day one is part of the reason why it will continue to maintain its value, right? As opposed to like if any of us wanted to just kind of think about how to redesign that now, it's going to be a lot different.
Well, that's a good segue. I see another question from David. There's so many cryptocurrencies. Seems like they will need to be pared down. How do you envision this happening? And what determines which currency will be the winners of such an outcome? So talk about a loaded question for this room, but I would. I'll hazard a guess. I'm the Bitcoin maximalist in the room, and I'll take the maybe pithy opinion that look at all the news out there of stead older companies that are putting all these millions of dollars into a new asset. They're not doing altcoins. They're not doing anything else. They're going with Bitcoin. It is the king right now.
We just saw, you know, the CME launching Ethereum futures, and how long did it take for that to happen? You know, and it's just now news. So it's, you know, there's room for other currencies in my opinion, but from a trading standpoint, I think the best thing to do is kind of just trade what's moving, whether it's link chain, Ethereum, Bitcoin. I think that there's room to make money with all of them.
From a trading perspective, absolutely.
Yeah, and one thing I want to kind of like clarify there too, Ryan, is that if you don't normally day trade, like if you don't day trade stocks, if you've never done that before, to think that you're going to come in and start day trading crypto, that's pretty gnarly. That's pretty crazy, right? But like if you have a 401k, or if you buy some stocks and you hold on to those stocks, and then you decide to buy some Bitcoin and hold on to that Bitcoin, like that's following like your similar behavior pattern, right? I'm the worst trader of all time. Like I buy the top and I sell the bottom. So I just hold from now on. Or just like, if you want to, I should have my own Substack and basically tell people when I buy or sell, so you can do the opposite.
Counter trade you.
Yeah, just do the exact opposite of what I do.
Question from my end: why do you think it's gnarly if you've never day traded traditional stocks before to enter into crypto trading?
No, so it's not. It's more around that, like, if you don't understand how trading works, right? I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it. Anybody can learn anything. I'm a big believer in that. Like, I taught myself how to do UX design, for example. You can learn day trading. It's just that if you're coming at it from, I want to make money and I want to start day trading, but you've never day traded before, you're probably going to have a little bit of an uphill climb. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's not going to be the easiest for you.
Yeah, it's definitely easier coming over from like trading traditional markets
or
to
Forex.
Yeah, Forex even. The think one thing that's the biggest difference in my opinion that for me was the fact that it's open 24/7. When you're trading stocks, they close at night. That's only open for a small window of time in the morning into the afternoon, and then it's done. But you really kind of have to pay attention for a market that is open 24/7, and you can actually use that to your advantage, to be honest. I think that a market that's open 24/7 gives a larger window of opportunity rather than just a traditional market that closes.
So I disagree actually on quite a lot of that. I think it's actually a lot easier to trade in crypto markets than it is traditional equities. So you break it down first by the fact that it's quite easy to just jump in and get started, as long as you do your KYC checks now. We are sadly not in the days of where we could skip that entirely. Data availability is available to anyone who understands how to scrape with Python. That is a huge difference compared to your traditional equities markets where you do have to pay for those data feeds. Yeah. You are not running up against HFT. Chances are that most of those traders are just using traditional good old-fashioned bots on the exchanges. Happen to know quite a lot of them. So there's very little HFT going on. And specifically when I mean HFT, I'm talking, you're not going up against BlackRock's dedicated FPGA team. You're just going up against other people that have probably downloaded the same Hasbot or Hummingbot as you have, or have something a little bit custom.
Or the BitMEX liquidation engine. I mean,
it's really easy to get started. And the thing is that there's so few traders in crypto right now compared to traditional equities that you can also carve out a little bit of turf for yourself. So if you're wanting to move into, say, DEXs, if you really like the whole DEX thing, you like the Ethereum ecosystem, you want to trade on that level, you can, and chances are you're only going to be running up against 3 or 4 others. Yeah. There's so many different altcoins as well that you can arbitrage very easily. You have more room for not only taking risks, but making mistakes. The traditional stock markets are quite punishing in that regard.
I completely agree with that statement.
So that's, just my partner is professional hedge fund manager. So we do a lot of trading here internally as well. And I would say that, it's the other thing is most of the exchanges are much more user friendly than traditional equities markets. So before Robinhood existed, you were working with your, international brokers and some of the other services, and they were god awful to use. And then things like BitMEX or Bittrex or Coinbase were like heaven above in their user interface. It was easy to get started. So just my thoughts on that matter. I think it's more approachable.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, well, the fact too that it's open 24/7, it gives you the opportunity to kind of sit down too, right, at any moment of the day and kind of get that, price action to watch and kind of learn from too, right? Like if someone has a regular job, regular 9 to 5, they miss the whole market, the whole screen time of the market being open. Rather, they can come into crypto and, later on in the day, shoot, even 1, 2 in the morning, they can sit down and get some screen time and, look at a level 2 of, buys and sells. So I do agree with that statement too. It is a little bit easier to get screen time within crypto because it's 24/7.
Nice. I want to get to a couple more questions here. Before I do though, real quick, if you are watching, do us a favor and make sure you're liking and commenting here. Thanks for joining us. As well as make sure you're subscribed to our channel. So I like Karthik's question here. What do you think is the biggest threat to Bitcoin as a long-term store of value? A competitive crypto, government regulation, anything else? It seems like government regulation could be to a level or to a point. Anybody?
I agree. I think government regulation can short-term hinder Bitcoin's adoption, but what it will do is set up intergovernment competition. If one regulatory agency or region gets too heavy-handed with Bitcoin, then it's like whack-a-mole. Bitcoin energy will flow elsewhere, route around it. And I don't mean to sound hubristic, but I don't see at this stage of the game it as a complete banning level threat. There'll be regulatory headaches ahead for sure, though. I think you're naive if you don't think any of that's coming. But
it's not kind of what I like to say is that it's not in the best interest of to allow of the government to allow this type of self-sovereignty in how someone manages their own finances and currency, right? Like,
it can't be valued.
Yeah, it's like, I'm a product manager. Brian, I know you're a product manager as well. And I kind of think if I put my hat on as like a government or institution, regulating type of body or so forth, that's why central bank digital currency is super interesting to them, of course, right? It's like, hey, you mean we can have our own currency
that we can debase. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And we can essentially have more tracking and monitoring, through that system, make it available. It'll also make things easier, of course, right? Like when we have those stimulus checks, just, getting that sent to your wallet, et cetera. But yeah, it's like, of course you would want a central bank digital currency more than you would perhaps want Bitcoin.
They might.
Yeah. If you're them, again, not me, if you're them.
Yeah, I do feel that that's the looming threat on the horizon. I just don't think it's a binary threat. I think it's just going to be like a series of speed bumps along the way that will be dealt with.
I tend to disagree just a little bit, just because I think Bitcoin, from like a value already, it's like a top 10 nation currency right now. And so if it does threaten the US dollar's ability to print, then that's when the Fed and that's when the government will start coming in. And I think as of right now, they're more favoring banks to come up with stable coins, because stable coins are back to the US dollar, versus if even like a small portion of today's wealth would be into Bitcoin, right, then the US loses a considerable ability to just print money and sort of do what they're doing, especially this year, right? Which is a big threat, and I think that's why they'll put a pause to try to figure out what the best solution is. Because so far the banks have been, so far the battle between crypto has been with banks and some institutions. But then as it gets larger, and I think it'll start battling countries and governments, and then that's when will start really changing, and we'll sort of see some corrections in the short term for sure.
Yeah, I was going to ask kind of everyone in the room, like, what are your guys' thoughts on Tether, and stable coins? Like, do you think that they're good for, kind of everything going on with digital assets, or do you think that they kind of defeat the purpose of it? I'm not the biggest fan of Tether, but I think stable coins, there is a place for them. But realistically, I'm just not sure how that kind of is going to play within the future of it.
Yeah. I look at it as the evolution of money personally. Like that's kind of how I think about it, is the evolution of money towards how existing financial systems work. As far as like, you know, the ethos behind Bitcoin, and like if that is completely different than why you would use a stable coin, for example. But if you have an in-network need, so a bank, in-network currency, or if, you know, anything, I think we'll start seeing stable coins for you know, enterprise corporations like Microsoft and all these type of companies having some base of digital asset that's for, you know, trade within their system. It makes sense in that network kind of scenario. But again, is it the same reasons why you might care for Bitcoin? Probably not. You're using them in different ways. Anybody else? What do you all think?
I guess I'm still skeptical on the long-term use of blockchain outside of Bitcoin for now.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many use cases that are being tried right now are solutions in search of a problem.
Yeah, I think in the long term, probably, yeah, like 10, 20 years down the line, just stable coins will be more used as digital money in our case, just because they are backed by the US dollar, or the ones that will be. And the biggest problem with Tether, I think, it's the whole audit issue, right? It's like whether they actually have the capital. I think that's always been the big question, and there's been some lawsuits regarding that. But, you know, if US permits JP Morgan to create their own stable coin and standardizes that along with Facebook's, not Libra, I forgot what they renamed it, and some other companies did the same, then that's where, you know, because like from a use case, it is a lot more efficient. Like, I don't know if you guys ever been to China, but like nobody uses cash. Everyone uses QR codes to pay for anything. And it's just, it's simply amazing. It's just like, why aren't we doing this here in the US as well too, right? But because there's so much less complications with handling money, you know, you have to do all these bank deposits and everything like that. Everything's all electronic. It does reduce cost, and ultimately that cost can be passed on to users. So whether it's in the form of higher interest rates, or, you know, in the form of Chinese government, they'd like to monitor more of their citizens and stop whatever, you know, if there was a criminal or they're complaining about the country, then they'll stop, you know, the user's bank account. But I don't think the US will go that far. But still, you know, from a financial perspective, like some of these stable coins like OKCoin or OKX launched, you know, like a 20% APY for their, you know, stable coin solution, which is pretty awesome, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but my bank's offering me like 0.05% interest rate for the last like 10 years. And if I can get 20%, I'm definitely going to move over there and, you know, just start earning some more money. For sure. So,
yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So someone brought up Libra in here. So, you know, real quick. So there's a stable act that is, you know, being proposed right now. It seems like that's kind of a little, maybe perhaps a little bit of an attack on Facebook, as well as the industry as a whole. Any thoughts on what's going on with that?
I think, I don't know. Part of me wonders if they've just bit off more than they can possibly chew, and doing it with the name they have right now and the overall negative impression that regulatory agencies are going to have of them for the next year or so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do they ruin it for everybody else?
I don't know. I'm always questioning, is this going to happen in the US versus like not Facebook, but some other major,
sure,
entity like Tencent or some SoftBank or someone's going to launch this before, and then they also will do it in a few years after they sort of learn all the pros and cons.
Yeah, I think if anyone can take that first hit in the US, let Facebook try, and then out of that might come a better solution. But someone's got to go first.
Yeah, definitely. Nice. Well, those watching, please ask us a little bit more questions. What about you guys? What questions do you have, you know, for our audience or for each other? Like, what are the things that you want people to be thinking about right now during this time?
So personally, I think that people that are getting interested in Bitcoin or even the larger crypto space, try not to get blinded by number go up in price as hard as it is on a day like today. think about some of the more deeper promises that some of these projects, especially Bitcoin in my mind, are offering, and look into it a little more than just, wow, that's an interesting investment. Like, look at what it could possibly be, and take it as an opportunity to learn about monetary policy and economics, and to compare it to what you see going on with QE on steroids going on in the US and all over the world right now. And I think it's a great time as a human to educate yourself on how money works, and then use this opportunity to figure out what's really important about money, and is Bitcoin better, and in what ways, and answer those questions for yourself.
Yeah. Anybody else?
And with that, I feel like I'm just dropping a grenade, but I have a hard stop. I have to leave. But
all right.
Thank you guys.
Brian, thanks for joining us. We're going to be wrapping up here in a second anyway, so thanks for joining us. Good to see you.
Nice to meet you guys. I'll see you online. Follow me on Twitter. I'll follow you guys as well.
What's your Twitter handle real quick for everybody?
Just my name, one word, Brian Lockhart.
Excellent. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
So, with that, I'd love if everybody just kind of had a closing word or a closing moment or something they want to leave our audience with as they go about their day. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I can go. I kind of am on the same page with Brian. Is it depends on what you want to do getting involved with Bitcoin and with digital assets. I think that yes, you should ignore, if you want to invest in this long term and start putting a little bit of money in, that's great. I think that that's an easy way to get started, and to kind of ignore the price. And even if you are down, make sure that you're not obviously overdoing your initial investment. You don't want to be down like too much. Just get kind of like your feet wet if you're not involved. But I think that there are a lot of ways to earn more, because that's why I love to trade Bitcoin, is because I like to earn more Bitcoin. Realistically, that's the end goal, is to kind of accumulate as much as possible. And so if you want to do that, kind of get involved with trading. You can look at technical, definitely on TA fundamental analysis as well. There's a lot of good altcoins out there that you could be trading. Link, Litecoin. You could be looking at a lot of different assets. But the main point is if you want to get started, just do what you can to get started, honestly. And all it takes is $20 a month, $40 a month, whatever you can use to get your feet wet. Just kind of do it.
Yeah. Simon, what about you? What you got?
I mean, for me, I'm a builder, right? So there's just crazy amount of innovation going on right now, and there's a lot of ways to just break, especially fintech, which is really exciting. There's all these fees. I think there's all these different services that really need to be outdated and just replaced. But yeah, and pretty bullish still, as always. I think we'll definitely see some battle with governments coming up soon. But yeah, if anyone here wants to earn free Bitcoin, you can use our platform. We have an app called StormX. You can do all your Christmas shopping and earn some Bitcoin and just get some cash back. It's like the honey for crypto. So it's an easy way for people to get in there. So yeah, just happy to help answer any questions as well too.
Nice. Awesome. Kristy, take us home.
I have nothing to add. You know me.
You always have so much wisdom. Come on.
No, I have no wisdom. No wisdom this time. Oh, geez. If you are a large company that is considering getting into Bitcoin as an alternative form of investment or an alternative asset, you should be mining right now, because you can produce one Bitcoin at about $5,200 right now. And it's selling for $21K. It's a pretty good return.
Can you unpack that a little bit? So how can they do that 5,200 for one Bitcoin, like in cost and energy costs?
Not just energy costs, equipment cost. So if you take about the cost of production of one Bitcoin is about 5,200 USD right now. So if you had, you'd have to have about 10,000 15,000 ASICs off the top of my head. But if you had that with average American cost on a data center, which would be 4.5 cents, 5.5 cents at worst, plus, all of your different additional taxes, you would be able to mine a Bitcoin today at about 5,200. And it fluctuates, it usually fluctuates a few $100 each way. But
I'm actually curious on that model just because I remember 21.co back in like 2014 raised like $120 million from like A16Z to do this, but then the Bitcoin price was stagnant, so ultimately their equipment costs, like they couldn't ultimately deal with the hedging problem. Like, how is this long-term?
21.co didn't do ASICs though. What they did specifically was they thought that they could build some cute little device that will allow you to mine at home. So it was a little different. That doesn't really make sense. It doesn't get any scale. For the cost you're having of an individual hash board, you're not making a return. So you want that high density machine that can churn out, today about 200 terahash for you.
Would it falls to like 3,000 or 4,000 again? Like, is that sustainable, or how long would it,
So generally an ASIC is going to cost you, in this market, it's going to cost 3,600 to 4,500. And that's because you're buying from the scalpers in the secondhand market. Right off the equipment manufacturer would be about $3,080 right from the manufacturer, if you're lucky enough to get that. And you amortize that over three years, though most of the equipment today is lost in 5 years. So traditional machine, you amortize over 3 years. Bitcoin machines are doing really well. I mean, the S9s are still holding up today and still making a profit in China. So,
what you're talking about is at scale though, right? Like an individual, if they bought, one of these ASICs, they're going to be in it for a while before they start seeing a Bitcoin, right? Or
an individual is still going to make profit. You should never just buy one ASIC because that's more just for tinkering. But an individual can still definitely make a profit by buying an ASIC, making sure it's hosted in a low-cost facility, and just joining a big pool. You're not going to make one whole Bitcoin, but you're going to make profit. Now, it will take a long time with just one ASIC to ROI your initial equipment purchase, yes. But I think right now, I can look it up. Slushpool has a great calculator on all of this, actually. Brains.com, the brains behind Slushpool. I think right now you can ROI in about 13 months, which is quite decent.
Yeah, that's great.
Would you, Kristy, kind of a question for you. Would you suggest kind of just staying with the A6 miners instead of, I've seen like the at-home like coin mine and the devices kind of created to kind of just do like a plug-in and.
Oh yeah. Don't buy a coin mine. Don't buy any of those devices. Like just those are devices really aimed at getting people who are just curious about mining engaged. It's not going to make you, any sort of large-term profit. This is really aimed at institutions. So the average user, your average user isn't going to put, multiple $1 million into stock and day trade at home, nor is your average user going to put multiple $1 million into ASICs and mine Bitcoin. It is a form of investment. This is really geared towards companies that are, potentially managing a fund and want to provide their, their clients with the asset class. And what we are starting to see now is investors actually team up with some of these companies to rent out a few ASICs and then get the coins themselves. But right now, it's far cheaper to mine Bitcoin than it is to buy on the market itself yourself. So just always monitoring that. Use brains.com has a fantastic calculator called cost to mine under Mining Insights, which shows you the exact cost to mine one Bitcoin and roughly how long it would take with one ASIC to mine a Bitcoin. So highly recommend checking that out. And it is a profitable investment right now. And I do believe Bitcoin will only go up. I think we might see a cap of 27K this year, though probably more likely to be 23K since we're nearing holidays. But,
do you think we come back down a little bit afterwards, or you think it's just perpetual for a little bit?
We're going to probably stagnate at about 17 to 18K. I don't think we're ever going to go back under 15K unless there is. So the thing is that the crypto markets are not decoupled from the traditional markets, like a lot of people say online. We already have seen the historical data of that. We've seen the panic during, COVID times. They are tightly coupled. So if we do have, another natural disaster or another pandemic or something like that happening, we may see crypto crash. So world events are still going to affect the crypto markets, same as they do the rest of the world and the rest of the traditional markets.
Yeah.
I actually haven't heard of this, but I'm curious. Is there a futures market for mining, like farmers? Like it'd be interesting to say, like, in 2 years, like I'll buy, your mining, like 12,000 or something like that.
So 2 things. First, a correction on my statements. It's now only $2,300 to produce 1 Bitcoin. So that was bad on my part. Apologies for that. So I was way off in a good way.
I think we're all looking, how do we buy 1,000 ASICs real quick?
How do we invest our money?
You have to have teamed up with a farm. So essentially there's no equipment being produced right now. It's kind of the market is being cornered. And the second thing, yes, there are futures markets. So FTX.com was the first to do futures for Bitcoin, and specifically hash rate futures. I highly recommend checking that out. I will say it's gamed to a little or geared towards people like me who kind of understand the industry, because obviously we have insider information, right? So sometimes it can be hard to compete, but it's definitely there. And then pools also offer a few hash rate futures. There's some interesting Ethereum projects that also do the same thing. And there are futures markets for Ethereum mining as well. So Ethereum hash rate.
Excellent. Well, everybody, thanks for joining in on this day. When I asked you all to do this, Bitcoin had not, catapulted through 21. So it's kind of perfect timing. I'd love to, if you can all just share your Twitter handles or what are good ways that people can follow you or get in touch with you if they wanted to.
Yeah, mine's very simple, just at Castillo Trading. Do a lot of technical analysis, and my DMs are open. So if you have any questions, you can just ask me, and I'm not afraid to give you guys what I think.
Nice.
My Twitter handle is Simon Yu, SEA, so Simon UC.
And Kristy, you're Oh Got a Girl.
I am Oh Got a Girl on Twitter. If you ever want to chat about mining, hit me up.
Excellent. Well, everybody, thank you for listening in on this live stream as we talked about Bitcoin. This is our second one, and we're going to try to keep this more regular. So please make sure that you are liked and subscribed on our YouTube and wherever you're watching this. You can follow me at JGProduct or at TFLabs_. And as everybody here, always happy to answer any questions or offer any support as you get into the crypto sphere. Thanks so much, and we'll see you all soon.
Later, guys.
Thanks, John.